Beijing Review, Volume 66, Numbers 5 through 6, February 9, 2023. The Spring Splurge. Consumption boom lights up the economy. For magazine photos, please visit the first link in the description below. A spending festival. China's outbound flight bookings more than quadrupled year-on-year during this year's Spring Festival holiday in late January, with combined bookings of all outbound travel products, including flights, accommodation, and activities, showing an even greater upswing, increasing 640% from a year ago. Destination countries are welcoming the influx of Chinese tourists as the global tourism industry continues its recovery. During the holiday, popular imported goods, including wine from France, almonds from the United States, cherries from Chile, and steaks from Brazil, all saw an uptick in sales. Cross-border e-commerce platforms offered special promotions to satisfy the demand of Chinese consumers, benefiting overseas businesses. 3 years after the emergence of COVID-19, the world saw a China full of vitality during this year's Spring Festival period, January 21st, 27. The holiday was not only a powerful engine driving consumption, but also a window through which to observe the Chinese economy. The fast-growing outbound travel and domestic consumption illustrate the growing momentum of economic recovery and demonstrate how much a strong Chinese economy means to the world. The Chinese market has been a powerhouse of global growth for decades, and in the post-pandemic era, China's contributions will be even more significant as all countries strive to revive their economies. This is also indicative of renewed confidence in China's development. The income of Chinese residents continues to grow. The number of upper-middle and high-income families has been expanding, and Chinese people are enthusiastically pursuing increased quality of life. The Chinese government takes expanding domestic demand as a major driver for economic growth as it advances the nation's industrialization and urbanization. All these factors make China a huge market with great potential. Strong sales of international products also demonstrate the importance of globalization, which is reflected in the global flow of goods and services. China is committed to defending and practicing economic globalization. Through its commitment to trade and investment facilitation, China is still playing a leading role in maintaining the stability of global industrial and supply chains. This week, celebrate good times. A group of men play the lushing, a reed pipe wind instrument, during the Po Hui Festival in Antai Township of Rongshui Miao Autonomous County in Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region on February 1st, the 11th day of the first lunar month. Po Hui is a traditional festival observed by the Miao ethnic group from the 3rd to the 17th day of the first lunar month in Rongshui. People partake in a range of activities such as lushing competitions, dragon and lion dances, as well as horse racing. The festival is also traditionally seen as an opportunity for young people to express their romantic interest in each other. This week, society, a mile a minute. Migrant workers, who constitute the major part of China's industrial labor force, prepare to board a bullet train at Chongqing West Railway Station in Chongqing on January 30th. The special train for migrant workers to return to work left for Guangzhou, capital of Guangdong Province, that same day, carrying some 890 passengers. Central Axis Protection. A protection plan for Beijing's Central Axis was released on January 28th, ahead of its application to become a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The plan, for the period from 2022 to 2035, pinpointed the conservation area's heritage and buffer zones, which had not been specified before. The heritage zone covers an area of about 5.9 square km, including 15 heritage sites such as the Forbidden City and the Temple of Heaven. The buffer zone covers 45.4 square km. A local official with the Office for Cultural Heritage Application and Protection said the plan is a required aspect of Beijing's application for its Central Axis to be included on the UNESCO World Heritage Site list. The Central Axis, or Zhongzhouxian, which can be traced back to the Yuan dynasty, 1271 to 1368, stretches 7.8 kilometers between Yongding Gate in the south of the city and the Drum Tower and the Bell Tower in the north. Most of the major ancient buildings of Beijing sit along this axis. Old Tea Trees Yunnan Province in southwest China has passed a new regulation to protect its old tea trees, Xinhua News Agency reported on January 28th. The regulation, which will take effect on March 1st, stipulates that wild and cultivated tea trees aged 100 and up should receive better protection, with a ban on the unauthorized cutting or transplanting of such trees. The regulation also prohibits the use of chemical weed killers on old tea trees. Yunnan is the province with the largest conservation area of old tea tree resources in China, with about 54 million old tea trees still standing tall in the province, according to official statistics. Defend the Yellow River. China has made remarkable progress in the ecological conservation of the Yellow River, the country's second-longest river, Xinhua reported on January 26. In the Yellow River Basin, the proportion of surface water rated at grade 1 to 3 in the country's 5-tier water quality system reached 87.5% in 2022, an increase of 5.6 percentage points from a year earlier, according to the Ministry of Ecology and Environment. Relentless endeavors have flowed into ecological protection along China's Mother River in recent years, with a Yellow River Protection Law to go into effect on April 1st. The ministry further said it would step up pollution control with regards to industry, agriculture, urban and rural life, as well as mining in the river basin, and explore more region-specific approaches for ecological conservation. Local governments will receive instructions to better put the law into practice, the ministry added. Legal aid. Throughout 2022, China's procuratorate provided legal aid to 82,000 people, up some 72% year-on-year, according to the Supreme People's Procuratorate, SPP. Xinhua reported on January 25th. The SPP, together with the National Rural Revitalization Administration, has released a collection of typical cases to highlight efforts to assist eligible rural families facing hardships stemming from lawsuits. In recent years, the SPP has also partnered with other authorities to crack down on illegal activities that undermine the safety of agricultural products and the security of agricultural funds, among other issues. Last year, procuratorial organs across the country supported indictments in 89,000 related cases to guarantee the timely delivery of paychecks to rural migrant workers and the legitimate rights of people with disabilities. They also participated in campaigns to tackle senior care fraud, with 9,447 people charged with the crime in 2022. Back on the job assembly line, staff are back at work inside an auto manufacturing enterprise's workshop in Jimo district of Qingdao, Shandong province, on January 28th, the first working day after the 7-day Spring Festival holiday. Park potential. With a batch of new parks opening to the public during the Chinese New Year holiday from January 21st to 27, the number of parks in Shanghai has risen to 670, according to the Shanghai Landscaping and City Appearance Administrative Bureau. Xinhua reported on January 25th. A newly opened pocket park in the Jiangsu Road sub-district under Changning District caters to residents who live in its vicinity by making it possible for them to go for a quiet stroll or lounge in the sun without having to go very far. This park was created from a jumble of enclosed green space. Now we don't just enjoy the flowers and green setting, but also exercise and relax there, a resident called Chu Xiaonan said. According to the city government's plan, Shanghai will be transformed into a city of thousands of parks by 2025. At full steam, a total of 4,100 kilometers of new railway lines went into operation across China in 2022, including 2,082 kilometers of high-speed tracks. Data from the China State Railway Group Company Limited showed, Xinhua reported on January 29th. As of late last year, China's in-service railways stretched 155,000 kilometers in total length, including 42,000 kilometers of high-speed network, according to the group. Fixed asset investment in China's railways reached 710.9 billion yuan, $105.4 billion, in 2022, promoting a series of major projects in the field of rail infrastructure construction. This year, China plans to launch new rail lines spanning more than 3,000 kilometers in total, including 2,500 kilometers for high-speed trains, the group said. The country has built the world's largest high-speed railway network to address the people's growing demand for convenient and comfortable travel. Road construction, Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region in northwest China, plans to invest 83.2 billion yuan, $12.3 billion, in road construction this year, according to the Regional Transport Department. Xinhua reported on January 30th. The investment will be allocated to 66 road construction projects, 22 of which will be completed within the year, Li Shuidong, deputy director of the department, said. In recent years, Xinjiang's transportation infrastructure has undergone a tremendous transformation for the better. In 2022 alone, Xinjiang spent more than 74.8 billion yuan, $11.1 billion, on road construction, a new record since 2018, Li added. The length of expressways in Xinjiang has reached 11,000 kilometers. All prefecture-level localities and nearly 90% of county-level localities are now accessible via expressways. In June last year, a new highway traversing the Taklamakan Desert, the world's second-largest shifting sand desert, went into operation. Located in South Xinjiang's Bayangolan Mongolian Autonomous Prefecture, the highway, connecting Yuli and Chiemo counties, is the third one to cross the Taklamakan Desert. Spring cleaning farmers remove weeds from a field in Nantong Township of Minhu County, Fujian Province, on January 30th. This week, economy. Tax and fee cuts. China's tax refunds, as well as tax and fee cuts and deferrals, exceeded 4.2 trillion yuan, $622.9 billion, in 2022, amid the country's efforts to stabilize the macroeconomy, the top tax authority said on January 31st. The total consists of approximately 2.46 trillion yuan, $364.8 billion, worth of value-added tax credits that have been refunded to taxpayers' accounts, over 1 trillion yuan, $148.3 billion, of tax and fee cuts, and 750 billion yuan, $111.2 billion, of deferred tax and fee payments. Wang Daoshu, deputy head of the State Taxation Administration, told a press conference. About 1.5 trillion yuan, $222.5 billion, of tax and fee payments were rebated, deducted or deferred for enterprises in the manufacturing sector last year, accounting for 35% of the total, Wang said. He added that small and micro enterprises, as well as individual businesses, saw more than 1.7 trillion yuan, $252.1 billion, in tax rebates, tax and fee reductions and deferrals in 2022. Market vitality has received a boost, Wang said, adding that last year saw the establishment of 13.15 million market entities which began engaging in tax-related activities. Manufacturing expansion. The manufacturing sector regained expansion in January after 3 consecutive monthly shrinkages, with major sub-indices posing surges, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS. The Purchasing Managers' Index, PMI, for the manufacturing sector came in at 50.1 in January, up from 47 in last December, NBS data showed. A reading above 50 indicates expansion and below that mark, contraction. The sub-index for large enterprises stood at 52.3 in January, up 4 percentage points from the previous month. Demand in the manufacturing market also rebounded, with the sub-index for new orders gaining 7 percentage points from a month earlier to 50.9. The sub-index for production stood at 49.8, up 5.2 percentage points from last December. The PMI for the non-manufacturing sector stood at 54.4 in January, up from 41.6 last December, the NBS said. SOE revenues. State-owned enterprises, SOEs, raked in 82.6 trillion yuan, $12.2 trillion, in operating revenues in 2022, up 8.3% from a year ago, data from the Ministry of Finance revealed. Their combined profits decreased 5.1% year-on-year to 4.31 trillion yuan, $639.1 billion last year, the ministry said. The SOEs saw their debt-to-asset ratio reach 64.4% as of late 2022, up 0.4 percentage points from the previous year. The net profits of companies under the direct regulation of the State-Owned Asset Supervision and Administration Commission of the State Council, commonly known as centrally administered SOEs, climbed 5% year-on-year to 1.9 trillion yuan, $281.8 billion, in 2022, according to the Commission. Port cargo throughput. The port of Ningbo Zhoushan in Zhejiang Province saw its cargo throughput exceed 1.25 billion tons in 2022, ranking first globally for a 14th consecutive year, according to the port. Its container throughput hit 33.35 million 20-foot equivalent units, TEUs, last year, ranking third globally. By the end of 2022, the port's sea routes totaled 300, marking an increase of 13 since late 2021. Its Sea Rail intermodal container transport service also saw robust growth last year, handling 1.45 million TEUs for the first time, up 20% over the previous year. Services trade. China's trade and services grew 12.9% year-on-year to 5.98 trillion yuan, $887.2 billion, in 2022, according to the Ministry of Commerce, MOFCOM. Exports of services expanded 12.1% year-on-year to around 2.85 trillion yuan, $422.7 billion, in the period, while imported services totaled 3.13 trillion yuan, $464.2 billion, up 13.5% from a year ago, resulting in a deficit of 275.71 billion yuan, $40.9 billion, MOFCOM data showed. Trade and knowledge-intensive services raked in 2.51 trillion yuan, $372.2 billion, in 2022, up 7.8% year-on-year. Exports of knowledge-intensive services increased by 12.2% to reach 1.42 trillion yuan, $210.6 billion, led by categories such as intellectual property royalties and computing and information services. Travel services continued their recovery momentum last year, as trade in this sector advanced 8.4% from 2021 to about 855.98 billion yuan, $126.9 billion, figures showed. Digital currency. The amount of digital yuan in circulation reached 13.61 billion yuan, $2.02 billion, by late 2022, data from the People's Bank of China, the country's central bank, showed. With the digital currency included, China's outstanding M0, a measure of the amount of currency in circulation, totaled 10.47 trillion yuan, $1.55 trillion, by the end of last year, up 15.3% year-on-year, according to the bank. As a digital form legal tender, the digital yuan is a component of the Chinese renminbi currency, just like the physical yuan. It is necessary to combine the statistics and analysis, as well as implementing overall management of the two currency forms, Xuan Changneng, vice governor of the bank, said. The inclusion of outstanding digital yuan in M0 can more accurately reflect the scale of currency in circulation, he added. Top shipbuilder. By late 2022, China's shipbuilding sector continued to be a global leader in the field, displaying the biggest market share in terms of output and orders, official data showed. The country's shipbuilding output hit 37.86 million deadweight tons, DWTs, last year, accounting for 47.3% of the world's total, according to the China Association of the National Shipbuilding Industry. New orders, another major indicator of the industry, stood at 45.52 million DWTs in 2022, with a global market share of 55.2%. The sector's holding orders totaled 105.57 million DWTs, up 10.2% year-on-year, taking up 49% of the world's total. 6 Chinese shipbuilding enterprises ranked in the world's top 10 in terms of the 3 aforementioned indicators, the association added. Fixed assets investment. The National Development and Reform Commission said it approved 109 fixed assets investment projects in 2022. These projects, with a combined investment value of 1.48 trillion yuan, $219.5 billion, mainly covered the areas of transportation, energy, and water conservancy, the commission added. Earlier data showed China's fixed assets investment rose 5.1% year-on-year to over 57.21 trillion yuan, $8.48 trillion last year. Investment in infrastructure and manufacturing climbed 9.4% and 9.1% from a year earlier in 2022, respectively. This week, World Pakistan. A man takes a closer look at the site of a suicide bombing in Peshawar on January 31st. The death toll of the attack on a mosque on January 30th has risen to 100, with over 200 people sustaining injuries. Egypt. A photo taken on January 26th shows a restored piece of pottery at the archaeological excavation site of ancient tombs near the pyramids of Giza, south of Cairo. The country's renowned archaeologist Zahi Hawass announced the exploration of the tombs had revealed a 4,300-year-old mummy. Switzerland. People leave the World Health Organization WHO headquarters in Geneva on January 30th, the same day the organization stated the COVID-19 pandemic still constitutes a public health emergency of international concern, the WHO's highest alert level. Cuba. People attend an activity commemorating the 170th anniversary of the birth of the country's independence hero, José Martí, in Havana, on January 27th, United States. A girl holds a candle at a nighttime vigil for the victims of the mass shootings in Half Moon Bay, California, on January 31st. 7 people were killed, and 1 person was critically injured in 2 related shootings on January 23rd, Madagascar. People cross a flooded road in Antananarivo on January 25th after the strong tropical storm Chinezo hit the country. 16 people were killed and 19 remained missing as of February 2nd. This week, People in Point's Best Director Award at SCO Film Festival, the 5-day Shanghai Cooperation Organization (SCO) Film Festival, concluded on January 31st in India's economic hub of Mumbai. Rao Xiaoji, director of the Chinese film Homecoming, won the award for the Best Director. Born in Zunyi, Guizhou Province in 1980, Rao graduated from the Central Academy of Drama in Beijing and started his career as a film and theater director in the early 2000s. Based on real events, Homecoming depicts a perilous journey of 2 unarmed Chinese diplomats taking 125 Chinese expatriates to flee a war-torn country across a desert and through artillery fire. Released in late September 2022, the film has garnered over 1.59 billion yuan, $237 million, at the box office in China to date. It has also been screened in North America, Oceania, Europe, Southeast Asia, and other major film markets. Floral Fest Guangzhou, daily January 20th. As the old Cantonese saying goes, no flower fairs, no spring festival. Spring festival flower fairs are a time-honored tradition in the southern metropolis of Guangzhou, Guangdong Province. On January 19th, the loud rings of a gong heralded the reopening of the flower market of this city of flowers, the first to return after 3 long years of disruption due to the pandemic. In 2021, Spring Festival flower fairs were added to the list of state-level intangible cultural heritage, along with other local culture such as Cantonese opera costumes, dim sum, and paper cutting. Now, flower fairs have become an iconic symbol of the city, attracting locals and travelers alike to participate in the preservation of festive traditions. This year has seen the emergence of a floating flower fair that combines a dazzling array of activities, like lion dances, bazaars selling all kinds of festival goods and delicacies, performances of martial arts, traditional Chinese music, offline boat tours and live broadcasts, and also a virtual bazaar in the metaverse. Industrial Tourism Oriental Outlook, January 26th. Recent years have witnessed the transformation of former industrial sites across China into popular tourist attractions. Some examples include the Winter Olympic venues at Shugang Industrial Park in Beijing, the World of Tsingtao, a beer museum converted from an old brewery in Qingdao, Shandong Province, and Shanghai Fashion Center, a one-stop shopping space built on the site of an obsolete cotton mill. These new constructions all belong to the category of industrial tourism, a form of tourism that fuses visits to decommissioned factories and plants with sports, museum tours, dining, and shopping. The concept originated in factory tours in Europe in the 1980s and was first adopted in China by Haier Group, a home appliances and consumer electronics company, in the 1990s. Though a latecomer, China is picking up speed in the development of industrial tourism. According to a report released by China National Tourism Administration in 2016, the domestic industrial tourism sector is expected to receive over 1 billion visitors and gross over 200 billion yuan, $29.64 billion, in 2025. The implications of this ongoing trend go far beyond the revival of tourism, as industrial tourism can be a strong powerhouse for the reconfiguration of urban spaces. By transforming themselves into parks, museums, and modern complexes, these industrial heritage sites have profoundly shaken the boundaries between industrial areas, offices, entertainment venues, and green spaces. China's rapid rise as an industrial power testifies to the hardships and glories that the country has went through since it embarked on a unique road of modernization. Chinese people have every reason to believe that these factory-converted landmarks will not only reshape the physical layout of cities, but also provide a new model for industrial upgrade. China has always been very impressive in dealing with challenges. Bandar Al-Karayev, Saudi Minister of Industry and Mineral Resources, in a recent interview with Xinhua News Agency, China has been one of the main promoters of international cooperation in recent years, with an emphasis on multilateralism and mutual benefit. It has always had a very clear predisposition to work cooperatively with our region. Gonzalo Tordini, director of the China-Argentine Strategic Program at the National Defense University in Buenos Aires, in a recent interview with Xinhua Cookie Cutter Culture Rednet.cn, January 29th. Datang Everbright City, a pedestrian street located in Xi'an, the capital city of Shanxi Province, has once again entered the spotlight as one of the most visited tourist attractions during the Spring Festival holiday, a tribute to the culture of the Tang Dynasty, 618-907. The street strives to create a one-stop leisure experience that integrates dining, shopping, and performances. Sensing strong rebounds in tourist activity after China recently broke the shackles of the COVID-19 pandemic, many cities followed suit by creating their own versions of Everbright City. However, made up of the same ingredients, light and music shows, sculptures, snack stands, and shopping, these newcomers seem to be little more than copy and pastes of their predecessor. On top of possible copyright issues, these spectacular yet repetitive projects already border on the cliched, causing tourists to eventually lose interest in these types of tourist attractions. When the novelty wears off, only those with strong local flavor can survive the ever-shifting trends in the tourist market. Hopefully, these Everbright-esque cities will offer a more varied and culturally distinct assortment of attractions in the years to come. World Cup referees. Chinese football match officials Ma Ning, Zhou Fei, Zhang Cheng, and Fu Ming were appointed to officiate matches of the ongoing FIFA Club World Cup in Morocco. Ma, a full international referee for FIFA since 2011, was the referee of a match between Egypt's El Ali Cairo and Auckland City from New Zealand on February 8th, while Zhou and Zhang served as assistant referees, the first time an all-Chinese referee team has officiated at the tournament. Fu was the assistant video referee of the match. The 2022 FIFA Club World Cup, which opened on February 1st, will run until February 11th. A total of 26 match officials, including 6 referees, 12 assistant referees, and 8 video match officials, have been chosen in close cooperation with FIFA's 6 confederations. We believe that developing countries deserve to have access to long-term financing to underpin their structural transformation, the investment in climate resilience and low-carbon development. Kristalina Georgieva, Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, at a roundtable discussion on climate financing schemes for developing countries on January 25th, the Asia-Pacific is not a battlefield for geopolitical contest and does not welcome the Cold War mentality and bloc confrontation. Mao Ning, spokesperson for China's foreign ministry, at a daily news briefing on February 1st cover story, A Robust Return Consumer Market Rebound Brings the Hustle and Bustle Back, by Li Xiaoyang Lisa Cao, a 20-something office worker in Beijing, enjoyed a special Spring Festival holiday this year. She traveled to Laos during the week-long break, which ran from January 21st to 27, after spending the festival, formerly known as Chinese New Year, in China for the past 2 years. After outbound travel resumed earlier this year, I was so excited that I decided to go abroad as soon as I could, Chow told Beijing Review. This is the first Spring Festival holiday since China optimized its COVID-19 response policies last December and removed all quarantine requirements for inbound passengers on January 8th. Group travel from China to designated countries also resumed on February 6th. As an avid traveler, Cao visited domestic and overseas destinations during holidays before the pandemic. She returned to China from a trip to Poland in early 2020, when COVID-19 started spreading, and did not travel overseas again until her visit to Laos this year. She spent about 10,000 yuan, $1,482 on this trip, and felt it was worthwhile. She plans to travel to more countries this year. Out for outings like Cao, many people traveled overseas as soon as COVID-related travel restrictions were lifted. According to travel platform Keytrip.com, overseas, bookings jumped 640% year-on-year during the Spring Festival holiday. Destinations in Southeast Asia, including Bangkok, Singapore, and Kuala Lumpur, were the most popular among Chinese tourists. Popular domestic travel destinations also saw large visitor numbers over the holiday. About 308 million trips were made in China in the period, up 23.1% year-on-year, according to the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. Domestic tourism revenue reached 375.84 billion yuan, $55.4 billion, gaining 30% year-on-year. Sales revenue of travel agencies and tourism services during the holiday surged 130% from 2022, recovering to 80.7% of the figure from 2019, Data from the State Taxation Administration, STA, showed sales revenue of hotel chains increased 30.6% from the corresponding period of 2022. Dalibai Autonomous Prefecture in the southwestern province of Yunnan attracted tourists with its warm weather, abundant sightseeing spots, and distinctive cultures of minority ethnic groups. According to official sources, the prefecture saw around 4.23 million tourists during the festival this year, surging 219% year-on-year. Total tourism revenue exceeded 3 billion yuan, $440 million, representing a 162% year-on-year growth. The tropical island province of Hainan was another top destination. According to estimates by local tourism authorities, Hainan received more than 1.61 million tourists during the 7-day holiday, up 25.98% year-on-year. Sales in its 12 offshore duty-free stores totaled 1.56 billion yuan, $231 million in the period, up 5.88% from the festival last year. Winter sport resorts across China also embraced visitors. In Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, the top skiing resorts received over 120,000 people during the festival, up 5% from the corresponding period last year. Tourism revenue reached 19.96 million yuan, $2.95 million, up 80.16% from 2022, local tourism authorities said. According to Pan Helen, co-director of the Digital Economy and Financial Innovation Research Center at Zhejiang University's International Business School, tourism is expected to further rebound in the second half of this year. The National Day holiday on October 1st, 7 will be a peak period. While demand is recovering, the capacity and services of tourist sites need to be improved, Pan told Beijing Review. Shopping Festival. For Chinese people, buying goodies including food and beverages, new clothing, auspicious decorations, and gifts before the Chinese New Year has long been a custom. Consumption of daily necessities continued to grow during the festival this year. According to the STA, sales of basic commodities such as grain, cooking oil, and food increased 31.5% from the corresponding period in 2022. As people's purchasing power improves, their expenditure on gold accessories went up during the festival. Online shopping added to the festive joy. Data from the State Post Bureau showed that more than 700 million parcels were collected and delivered from January 21st to 27. The number of delivered parcels went up 10% year-on-year to 330 million in the period, a 254.8% increase compared with 2019. Global products reached Chinese consumers through resuming logistics. According to the customs authorities at Pudong Airport in Shanghai, around 2,000 tons of imported fresh seafood had entered the Chinese market by air since January this year, up 14% year-on-year. Sales revenue of consumption-related sectors was 12.2% higher than that corresponding period of 2022, the STA said. Spring festival decorations and Chinese-style performances were seen in cities around the world, and consumers overseas also embraced Chinese New Year products. According to AliExpress, a Chinese international e-commerce platform, users from more than 200 countries and regions searched for keywords like Chinese New Year and Rabbit Year on the platform before the Spring Festival this year. Festive decorations saw a 560% year-on-year growth of sales on the platform in December 2022. Sales of other made-in-China products like winter sport equipment to other countries also went up. Cultural appeal. During the festival, cinemas nationwide sold 129 million tickets, generating gross revenue of 6.76 billion yuan, $1 billion, the second highest for the Spring Festival holiday to date. Traditional festive events were also back this year for celebration. People visited fairs to stock up on items for the new year, viewed lantern displays, and enjoyed folk performances. The molten iron firework performance, or dadiehua in Chinese, is a form of national intangible cultural heritage. Performers presented the splendid molten iron fireworks show at night in many regions as part of celebrations for the festival. The 2023 Spring Festival ushered in the Year of the Rabbit in the Chinese zodiac. Rabbit-themed products were bestsellers during the holiday. Ceramic figurines of Tuer Ye, also known as the Rabbit Master, Rabbit God, Grandpa Rabbit, or Lord Leverett, are a form of intangible cultural heritage in Beijing. Local people believe it can bring happiness and good luck, as well as ward off illness. As rabbits are the star of this year, many people went to buy completed Tuer Ye figurines, or to buy plain white ones to paint themselves at shops during the Spring Festival. Zhang Zhengqiang, a 60-year-old inheritor of Beijing's painted clay sculpture art, has been making Tourier figurines for more than 3 decades. In addition to traditional versions, he has also produced innovative ones, such as those themed on the Beijing Central Axis and aerospace exploration. Now Zhang runs 2 stores selling his products. During the holiday, one of them sold around 800 Tourier figurines. Nearly 40 people made reservations to paint their figurines at the store, including many visitors from other countries, Zhang told Beijing Review. Wentongzi, a homegrown art toy brand based in Hangzhou, Zhejiang province, also attracted many consumers. According to its founder Shun Zhe, it first introduced the Striver Rabbit series in 2016, featuring a frowning rabbit with rolled-up sleeves. It symbolizes the character of overcoming headwinds with firm determination. In recent years, young Chinese consumers have been increasingly embracing homegrown brands and seeking more diverse and personalized products in recent years. That has brought opportunities for art toy brands like Wentongzi. Its products are sold on online platforms including Tmall, an e-commerce platform owned by tech company Alibaba, Shen told Beijing Review. We introduced a new rabbit toy exclusively for this spring festival. Our pre-holiday daily sales soared 300% from usual levels, Shen said. Great potential. The consumer market rebound during the Spring Festival was indicative of China's economic recovery. As global financial institution Goldman Sachs projected in a report in late 2022, consumption will likely be the bright spot of economic growth in 2023. Chinese exports are poised to slow on weakening external demands, while growth drivers rotate from investment to consumption on reopening. Within consumption, sectors that have been most constrained by COVID-19, such as travel and entertainment, have the most room to recover, the report read. It expected China's consumption to rebound strongly in the first half of 2023. Over the past year, the pandemic led to consumption growth below expectations. China's total retail sales of consumer goods declined 0.2% year-on-year in 2022. Consumption contributed 32.8% of GDP growth last year, decreasing from 65.4% in 2021. Wen Bin, chief economist at China Minsheng Bank, told Beijing Review. Consumption plays a key role in stabilizing economic growth and driving industrial production. To boost its contribution, the authorities need to further improve employment, increase offline consumption opportunities, and shore up financial support, according to Wen. From a low base, consumption is expected to rebound sharply this year and achieve double-digit growth. It will become a driving force of economic growth again, he said. Copy edited by G.P. Wilson. Comments to Lixiao Yang at SIGAmericas.com. Cover story. Burning for more? Ice and snow tourism is touted to become a spring festival tradition, by Elsbeth van Paradin. What fire does not destroy, it hardens. Illustrious Irish poet and playwright Oscar Wilde wrote in his only novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray, in 1890. It was the quote that somehow sprang to this author's mind as she gazed into the languid flames struggling to stay alive inside a towering hot pot sculpture at an annual winter festival in Longqingxia Scenic Area, a 2-hour drive away from downtown Beijing. Just to dot the I's, hot pot is a flavorful broth brought to a boil at table. Raw ingredients, including fish, meat, and vegetables, are put into the simmering broth and thus cooked throughout the meal. It's possibly China's ultimate comfort food. As the winter festival in Longqingxia was celebrating North China's ice lantern tradition, the huge hot pot sculpture was made entirely of ice. Nevertheless, it proved a warming sight as many of China's residents shivered through a freezing Chinese New Year holiday from January 21st to 27 this year, as temperatures in certain parts of the country, including Beijing and its surrounding areas, plunged to record lows. On the morning of January 25th, the National Meteorological Center announced a weather station in Mentugu District, on the outskirts of Beijing, recorded its lowest ever temperature of minus 22.4 degrees Celsius. In China, bright floral quilted jackets, fireworks, elaborate lanterns, and other lively and festive items are all embedded in the tapestry that is Chinese New Year or Spring Festival, which fell on January 22nd this year. And when tourists began to flock to China's snow and ice destinations during the 3-day New Year holiday, from December 31st, 2022 to January 2nd, A number of leading domestic media outlets, including People's Daily, China Daily, and the Paper.n, suggested ice and snow sports may be in the process of joining these Chinese New Year traditions. Based on the number of users posting short videos and other visuals of their ice and snow vacation fun on Chinese social media during the Spring Festival holiday alone, one might be inclined to agree with their suggestion. So as she stood there in this grotto, surrounded by ice lanterns and warming herself by the imaginary broth burbling inside the massive frozen dish in front of her, this author wondered and pondered. Last year's Beijing Winter Olympics inspired unprecedented interest in ice and snow sports, with national authorities setting the goal of 300 million Chinese participating in these sports by the time the games commenced. But almost 1 year on, will China continue to maintain its ice and snow fervor? How it all began. A rock carving of skiers uncovered in a cave close to Altai City in Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region in 2005 remains one of the earliest records of humankind's skiing activities. The petroglyph shows that skiing as a means of transport for humans has a history of at least 10,000 years. During the reign of Emperor Qianlong, 1736–96, of the Qing dynasty, 1644–1911, ice sports became a mainstream winter activity in China as new sports including ice skating and archery on ice skates took shape, involving early forms of skates and sleds. To survive the harsh, cold winters, the ancient Chinese of several ethnic groups residing across North China gradually turned ice and snow to their own advantage. During the Qing, farmers and fishermen on the Songnen Plain in the northeast, for example, would fill a bucket with water and then place it out in the open to partially freeze. After pulling out the bucket-shaped ice, a hole was made in the bottom to allow the water remaining inside to escape, creating a hollow vessel. This would then be placed over a candle, et voilà, a windproof ice lantern, the ancestor of today's multicolored winter festival ice lanterns, was born. Chinese people also hold the long-standing belief that a snowflake represents purity, dignity, and royalty. No wonder then that during the opening and closing ceremonies of the Beijing 2022 Games, directed by revered film director Zhang Yimou, a giant illuminated snowflake became a recurring symbol. The enormous flake consisted of 91 smaller ones representing each delegation to the Games. Feel the burn. Driven by the Winter Olympics, ice and snow, tourism has gradually gained popularity among Chinese people. A report on China's snow and ice tourism development, released by the China Tourism Academy on January 8th, predicted that the number of snow and ice leisure travelers in China will exceed 300 million in the 2022-23 winter season. This number is expected to reach 520 million in 3 years' time, and related tourism revenue will reach 720 billion yuan, $106.1 billion. With this promising market potential, many related businesses and destinations are preparing to take advantage, eager to lace up those figure skates and put their own spin on it. For example, this season more than 20 parks across the city of Beijing, including the Summer Palace, Beihai Park, and the Olympic Forest Park, have launched ice and snow activities that will continue to run throughout February 2023. Those seeking the real skiing experience need only travel a little further outside the city. Standing atop a windy mountain at the Olympic Zone in Beijing's Yanqing district, located 75 kilometers from the downtown area, Bi Chongming told Beijing Review on January 18th that this ski season has already seen an uptick in visitors ready to take on the slopes conquered by Olympic champions last year. Bi is Deputy General Manager of Beijing National Alpine Skiing Company Limited, which manages Yanqing's Olympic Zone. During the Games, the zone hosted sliding sports, bobsleigh, skeleton, and luge, as well as alpine skiing competitions. As China's first competition zone to meet Winter Olympic standards, it has been gaining popularity among skiers, Bai explained. From last May, visitor numbers have been on the up, particularly starting from the second half of December until January 2023, the beginning of the ski season. Given that the number of visitors keeps rising, the Spring Festival holiday is bound to bring another travel peak. And B was right. The Spring Festival holiday saw nearly 20,000 visitors from all over the country flock to the area, generating nearly 10 million yuan, $1.5 million, in ticket and hotel revenue. Over the past year, Yanqing has continuously promoted the use of its Winter Olympic venues, promoting sports training and sports tourism, and accelerating the improvement of infrastructure and supporting services, homestays included. The local Dongorengia, or Winter Olympic homestays, were fully booked around this time last year, courtesy of the Games. And even though business has slowed due to the impact of COVID-19 since mid-2022, owners are confident that, with the relaxing of pandemic control measures in December last year, things will pick up. Take Chen Fenglan and her husband, for example. They own a homestay in Gucheng Village, Xianghaiju, one of the 100 Olympic B&Bs in Yanqing. Chen shared her optimistic outlook for 2023 with Beijing Review, saying, "We expect to welcome more guests after Spring Festival, as this year's holiday will see many Chinese going home to reunite with their families for the first time in 3 years. Spring particularly looks to be a promising season. Our biggest advantage is that we also have the facilities to cater to travelers during the warmer seasons, given we have a heated outdoor pool and leisure area. Cities across northeast China are also set on further developing their ice and snow tourism to move past their declining industrial-based stereotypes. Related cultural activities such as the ubiquitous ice lantern and snow sculpture festivals, with the Piece de Resistance being the annual Harbin Ice and Snow Sculpture Festival in Heilongjiang Province, have turned large parts of this region into winter wonderlands straight out of a fairy tale. China's northwest, too, is gearing up to become an ice and snow powerhouse. The land of plentiful powder, Xinjiang, home to the 10,000-year-old depiction of skiers, is comparable to the European Alps or the Rocky Mountains in North America in both latitude and geography. This ski season, all 84 ski resorts in Xinjiang are fully open to the public, and the Regional Culture and Tourism Department has established 180 activities focusing on snow and ice tourism. According to Beijing Review opinion editor Li Fangfang, who is from Xinjiang and returned there for the Spring Festival holiday, the quality of the region's powder snow has long been well known to locals, but became nationally renowned during last year's Winter Olympics. Arriving in Altai City during the holiday to explore the winter scene, Li found the place was already swarming with like-minded visitors. Boasting one of Asia's top ski resorts, Jikapulin International Ski Resort is a popular destination for hitting the slopes, with tens of thousands of short videos on Douyin, China's TikTok, dedicated to the resort's 103 ski runs and their surroundings. Circling back to the original question, considering the numbers, first-hand information, and social media dedication, plus the tiny element that China's Spring Festival does coincide with the annual skiing season, it seems the country's ice and snow affinity will keep firing up over the years to come. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. The poem by the aptly named Robert Frost explores the power of ice and fire as agents of destruction. But far from being agents of destruction, ice and snow in China are instead sparking the creation of new sports, leisure activities, businesses, industries, and even new traditions. With the culture and economy around ice and snow growing so rapidly, it's clear that while the festival itself will always be a celebration of spring, the holiday is increasingly becoming a celebration of winter and its many delights. Copy edited by G.P. Wilson. Comments to Elsbeth at sigamericas.com. Cover story: Festival season for films. The Spring Festival holiday resumes growth in status as a bonanza for the film industry. By Yuan Yuan. The films released for this year's Spring Festival holiday, January 21st, 27, made up a platter of diverse genres: a historical twist-filled comedy, a sci-fi epic, an espionage thriller set during World War II, a modern romantic comedy, and 2 animations targeting different groups, one family-friendly, and the other more for grown-ups seeking a tearful movie experience. By the end of the holiday, these films had yielded combined box office revenues of 6.76 billion yuan, $1 billion, the second highest for the Spring Festival holiday in China, right after the 7.8 billion yuan, $1.16 billion, of the holiday period in 2021, and much higher than the 6.04 billion yuan, $901 million, of the holiday period in 2022. The winners many expected, The Wandering Earth 2, would top the holiday lineup in terms of ticket sales. The film is the sequel of The Wandering Earth, which was released during the Spring Festival holiday in 2019 and became a landmark in Chinese science fiction films by raking in 4.688 billion yuan, $700 million that year, the 5th highest of any film in China's movie history. After leading the pack during the first 2 days of the holiday, the earnings of The Wandering Earth 2 were overtaken on the 3rd day by those of Full River Red, directed by Zhang Yimou, one of China's most celebrated directors. Telling a story of revenge set during the Southern Song Dynasty, 1127 to 1279, Full River Red takes its name from a well-known poem that is believed to be composed by Yue Fei, a heroic patriot of that period. The story begins with a murder case in a large traditional courtyard house. Characters walk through interlacing narrow alleys to interrogate local residents. Rhythms of Yuju opera, a traditional opera of central China's Henan province, were adopted as the background music to echo the plot. Audiences hailed the film for its suspenseful historical theme and tight plot. Even though it was 2 hours and 40 minutes long, I never felt it was boring, one moviegoer told Beijing Review after watching the film in a cinema in Beijing. It is full of twists, and it is a cool way to tell the story. By the end of the holiday, Full River Red took first place with ticket sales of about 2.61 billion yuan, $388.6 million, followed by The Wandering Earth 2 with over 2.16 billion yuan, $321.6 million, according to Xinhua News Agency. The animated film Boonie Bears Guardian Code also broke a record by grossing 746 million yuan, $111 million, during the holiday season, becoming the highest-earning animation during a Spring Festival holiday. The plot revolves around the family of the Boonie Bears brothers. Since 2014, the Boonie Bears franchise has released a film per year, with 6 of those being released during Spring Festival holidays. For many families, watching a Boonie Bears film in a cinema has become a regular holiday activity. Twists and turns, high expectations were also placed on fantasy animation Deep Sea, as its director Chen Xiaoping had made box office history with his debut film Monkey King, Hero is Back 8 years ago. Released during the summer vacation of 2015, Tian's debut film was China's first animated film to take more than 1 billion yuan, $149 million, in gross sales. Deep Sea tells the story of a teenage girl's journey under the sea. The girl, suffering from depression, has dreams about adventuring deep under the ocean. The movie adopted particle Chinese painting technology, which combines Chinese ink painting with 3D technology. It is the first movie that fully utilizes the technology to create breathtaking scene of the deep sea and to show the inner world of people with depression, the entanglement, struggle, and imagination. Tian hopes the movie will call more attention to the issue of depression. The movie's visual spectacles were applauded by audiences, but comments on its plot have gone to extremes. Some claimed to be fully absorbed by the plot and couldn't help shedding tears, while others said the film paid too much attention to special effects and the story itself was dull. At a live streaming talk with viewers on China's video sharing platform Douyin on January 26th, Tian admitted that he had thought that the movie might only appeal to a niche audience during the Spring Festival holiday, a time of family reunions and reconnection, but financial pressures precluded the team from putting the release off until the next film season, the summer break. He also revealed that he will go back to the Monkey King story for his next movie. Apart from the 6 movies, Ping Pong the Triumph, directed by and starring Deng Chao, made only a brief debut during the Spring Festival season. Telling the story of the Chinese men's national table tennis team in the early 1990s, the movie was released on January 24th, 4 days later than the other festival movies. However, out of the fear to be outshone by the blockbusters, on January 25th, it announced its retirement from the holiday lineup as ticket sales on the first day did not meet expectations. The movie is set for re-release on February 17th. More than box office, The Wandering Earth 2 has not only ranked second in terms of sales, but also made headlines for the appeal of its merchandise. Adapted from the eponymous novel by Liu Cixin, the movie tells how humans make audacious efforts to propel the Earth out of the solar system to escape the rapidly expanding sun. With the release of the movie, a crowdfunding project was launched on the e-commerce platform Taobao for producing niche merchandise, including robotic dog models and USB flash drives. Over 100 million yuan, $15 million, was raised by January 30th, with more than 433,000 orders being placed, 1,000 times its original goal of 100,000 yuan, $15,000. Moreover, Wang Xiaolei, director of Xi'an Film and Television Data Evaluation Center, said the Spring Festival holiday marked a new start for China's film industry after the pandemic response was optimized in late 2022. The box office sales of these 6 movies continued to grow after the holiday. As of January 29th, The Full River Red maintained its lead with 3.16 billion yuan, $465 million, followed by The Wandering Earth 2 with 2.57 billion, $378 million. By January 31st, total ticket sales for January in China surpassed 10 billion yuan, $1.5 billion, Wang said. Copy edited by G.P. Wilson. Comments to Yuan Yuan at sigamericas.com. Opinion: U.S. Do sanctions really work? By Zhong Chung, sanctions are increasingly employed by the U.S. to promote the full range of its foreign policy objectives. Yet all too often they turn out to be little more than expressions of U.S. displeasure or disapproval, proving to be blunt instruments that are unlikely to achieve desired results, and may even produce unintended and counterproductive consequences. U.S. President Joe Biden's use of sanctions as part of foreign policy has brought the international nuclear deal with Iran to almost an end, and the U.S. imposed more new sanctions on Iran at the beginning of 2023. The use of sanctions as a deterrent weapon raises an important question. Are they capable of actually changing the behavior of states, or are there other factors that affect their effectiveness? Excessively used. Sanctions are defined as mostly economic but also political and military penalties, introduced to alter another country's political or military behavior to accomplish foreign policy ends. As manifested by history, sanctions, either comprehensive or selective, may take the form of commercial and financial policies that typically ban customary trade and financial relations, block the sanctioned country's ports, and reduce or remove diplomatic ties. They also include withdrawal of diplomatic relations, visa denials, negative votes in international financial institutions, foreign assistance reductions and cutoffs, export and import limitations, asset freezes, tariff increases, revocation of most favored nation trade status, cancellation of air links, as well as prohibitions on credit, financing, and investment. Arms embargoes and even targeted military strikes are also available options. Sanctions can also be applied to political leaders or individuals in the business community, including freezing their assets or imposing travel bans on them. Sanctions have been a predominantly American weapon since World War II, and the U.S. has been by far the world's most prolific user of economic sanctions. For much of that time, it has acted alone, and its willingness to throw its economic weight around to change other countries' behavior has remained a constant. For example, the U.S. has sanctioned a number of countries such as Syria, Venezuela, and Ethiopia in an attempt to interfere in their domestic affairs. It has introduced additional sanctions on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea over the country's nuclear program. China has also been targeted. In addition to initiating a trade war, the U.S. has imposed illegal sanctions on Chinese officials under the pretext of the so-called human rights issues related to Tibet, which gravely interfered in China's internal affairs and violated basic norms governing international relations. To further strangle China's technology sector, the Biden administration in 2023 pressed the Netherlands and Japan to join the U.S. in restricting exports of semiconductor technology to China. Washington is also reportedly considering banning all sales to Chinese telecommunications equipment giant Huawei by U.S. suppliers, including Intel and Qualcomm. Such a move runs counter to the principles of a market economy, tramples on the basic rules that govern international trade, and reflects how desperate the U.S. has become as it goes to greater lengths to try to suppress China's technological progress. Double-edged swords. However, most U.S. sanctions have not brought about their intended results, and prove to be double-edged swords. They not only fail to resolve security issues, but also cause more economic challenges, harming the lives of ordinary people, hastening global conflicts, aggravating existing tensions, and further escalating division and confrontation. The sanctions on Russia during the Russia-Ukraine conflict, for example, have led to serious global repercussions. The U.S. has restricted the sale of Russian raw materials and energy, worked to prevent Russia from obtaining defense and information technologies, imposed financial sanctions on Russian banks, curtailed Russia's access to foreign capital and financial markets, frozen the assets of wealthy and powerful Russian citizens, and restricted their ability to travel. Biden has explicitly stated that the U.S. intends to crater the Russian economy. According to reports, after the Biden administration announced a ban on oil, gas, and other energy imports from Russia in March 2022, the European Commission unveiled plans to cut EU dependency on Russian gas by two-thirds, and agreed at the end of May to stop seaborne imports of Russian oil by year-end. The United Kingdom announced a phase down to zero use of Russian oil by the end of 2022. Russia is a major exporter of oil, grain, and other major commodities, from which nearly a quarter of the world's wheat supplies come. As the world economy has become considerably more integrated because of globalization, Russia-targeted sanctions are having far greater global repercussions than similar measures previously placed on other countries. Western sanctions on Russia have hit equity markets around the world and sent the prices of oil and wheat soaring. Escalating unilateral sanctions fractured global industrial and supply chains and hurt the livelihoods of people of many countries, especially those in low-income countries in Africa and the Middle East, who have no responsibility for paying for geopolitical conflicts and major country competition. Russia accounted for roughly 40% of the EU's gas imports, 25% of its oil imports, and 47% of its coal imports, according to the EU's Statistics Office, making Russia the most important fuel supplier of the EU. The ensuing sanctions against Russia could harm Europe's energy supplies and stall its economic growth. Although European leaders agreed to reduce natural gas demand by 15% and confirmed their commitment to finding alternatives, this consensus may not last long, as banning Russian imports has sent energy prices soaring for European consumers and further dimmed European people's prospects for better standards of living. European leaders sensed the predicament the sanctions had put them in and began to back away from the united stance. Multiple examples are confirming that sanctions are inefficient and ineffective weapons against the U.S. administration's claims. This is because other factors influence their effectiveness. These include, inter alia, the economic strength of the sanctioned countries, the strength of public opinion within the initiator countries, the extent to which other countries are committed to applying sanctions, and the possibility of the emergence of more powerful alliances to circumvent the sanctions. Moreover, sanctions may be an easy political sell, but they can backfire and expose the inability of the United States. The U.S. Federal Reserve last year introduced 7 interest rate hikes to curb rising inflation, which is being exacerbated by the Ukraine crisis. The surge in prices of crude oil and other commodities that have resulted from the crisis has put additional upward pressure on inflation in the U.S. While the U.S. government can take steps to help manage and assuage some of the negative effects on the U.S. economy, it is not clear that after a period of very painful and weaker economic growth, what will be looming ahead. The right choice. The willful wielding of the big stick of sanctions can never guarantee peace and security, and the U.S. should not continue to deploy the same tactics that have failed over and over again. Additionally, U.S. sanctions should not be confused with those imposed by the UN, and unilateral sanctions have no basis in international law and should be rightly opposed. When addressing regional and international issues, war and sanctions are not good options. Dialogue and negotiation are the fundamental way out. All efforts conducive to a peaceful settlement should be encouraged and supported. The author is an op-ed contributor to Beijing Review and an expert on international studies. Comments to Yanwei at sigamericas.com. Opinion, Africa, High on Rhetoric, Short on Deliverables, by Charles Onunaiju. Since it was first held in 2014, the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit has struggled to meet its stated goals of fostering trade, development, security, and health on the continent. Iterations of the summit have drawn considerable media attention but have shown little continuity, had few results to report, and even fewer new initiatives to announce. Between 2014 and now, Power Africa, the signature initiative of former U.S. President Barack Obama, aimed at doubling access to power in sub-Saharan Africa, where more than two-thirds of the population live without electricity, and more than 85% of those living in rural areas lack electricity, has mostly floundered. John Rice, then vice chairman of General Electric, gave a scathing verdict several years after the initiative was launched, noting that the number of megawatts, MW, that was actually on the grid directly from the Power Africa initiative was very small. The initial phase of the project aimed to add more than 10,000 MW of cleaner, more efficient electricity generation capacity, with a target to increase electricity access by at least 20 million households, and an ultimate goal of adding 30,000 MW of clean electricity and 60 million new connections, with an investment of about $7 billion. The initial phase of the project, 2013 to 18, was set to build power generation capacity in Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Liberia, Nigeria, and Tanzania. However, around the phase's halfway point in July 2015, Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission Chairman Sam Amadi said there had not only been a lack of action on the project, but also a lack of plans for action. "I am not aware of any concrete plans for power plants that have emerged as a result of Power Africa," Amadi was quoted as saying in a New York Times article published on July 21st that year. Prosper Africa, another initiative, was launched in 2018 and was designed to substantially increase two-way trade and investment between the U.S. and Africa. By the end of 2021, it had delivered a paltry two-way trade of just $64 billion, less than 1% of total U.S. trade with the world. Similarly, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, passed at the turn of the century to grant duty-free status to goods from designated African countries, renewed in 2015 and due to expire in 2025, has added little or no momentum at all to U.S.-Africa economic exchanges, playing with words. The most recent U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit, taking place in Washington, D.C. in December 2022, was not short on lofty rhetoric. U.S. President Joe Biden told his guests, "We are all in on Africa's future," and announced $55 billion in commitments. However, only $15 billion of that was new commitment, with the bulk of the headlined $55 billion coming from initiatives that have already been announced in previous forums. Some observers noted that while there were a few interesting investment announcements and commitments, the overall feeling was that an assemblage of disparate deals had been turned into a presentable enough commitment to give an impression that the U.S. is all in on Africa's future. Behind the glitter of the Washington summit, there are no roadmaps, benchmarks, timelines, or specific deliverables to give concrete momentum to the existing modest commercial and economic relations between the two sides. The summit, which had an opportunity to invigorate the existing cooperation, went overboard in preaching that the private sector on both sides should pat themselves on the back, as if that was not happening already, but fell far short on establishing institutional and other structural processes to drive the relationship on a sustainable basis. Definitely, the U.S. is more interested in geopolitics than the critical inputs that would support Africa in building self-propelling capacity, seeking its own interests. The summit itself was ostensibly inspired by geopolitics, an extension of the U.S. obsession with containing China and, to a lesser degree, Russia on the global stage, especially in regions where China's footprints are growing. The U.S. strategy on sub-Saharan Africa, released in August 2022, made no pretense about the reason for the renewed U.S. interest in Africa. It has accused China of seeing Africa as an arena to challenge the international order, advance its own narrow commercial and geopolitical interests, and weaken U.S. relations with African peoples and governments. Chairman of the African Union, AU, and Senegalese President Macky Sall said at the general debate of the 77th UN General Assembly in September 2022 that Africa has suffered enough of the burden of history and that it does not want to be the breeding ground of a new Cold War, but instead serve as a pole of stability and opportunity, open to all its partners on a mutually beneficial basis. At the Washington summit, Biden promised to support the AU to become a permanent member of the Group of 20, G20. However, the G20 has already reached out to major international organizations and significant regional groups on its own. Being more of a mechanism or process than an organization, its agenda and outreach are constantly evolving, and engaging important global players is essential for remaining relevant. Moreover, African countries need to boost their capacities and find their places at the international table on their own, rather than being patronized by others. Another eye-catching sweetener of the Washington summit was the appointment of a special U.S. envoy to coordinate U.S. interests in Africa and drive the summit's outcomes. The role went to Ambassador Johnny Carson, who is known for his condescending arrogance toward Africa. Prior to the Kenyan presidential election in 2013, Carson, then Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, warned Kenyan voters that whatever choice they make would have consequences. The comment was viewed with alarm across Africa, and already there are concerns regarding whether Carson would be knocking heads or mending fences in his new role. Action needed. At the summit, Biden said, "African voices, African leadership, African innovation, all are critical to addressing the most pressing global challenges. Africa belongs at the table in every room, in every room where global challenges are being discussed, and in every institution where discussions are taking place. As a major country, the U.S. has a hand in contributing to international instability, and there is no doubt that Africa's moderating influence can douse some of these tensions. Whether it is piling pressure on Russia through surrogate wars, or seeking confrontation in the Indo-Pacific, these actions divert energy and attention from creating a world that is free, a world that is open, prosperous, and secure, to use Biden's words. With all the talking done, the key now is to walk the talk. The U.S., as the convener of the summit, should take the initiative. The world is watching. This article was first published in the Chin Africa magazine. The author is director of the Center for China Studies, Abuja, Nigeria. Copy edited by G.P. Wilson. Comments to Yanwei at sigamericas.com. Opinion, Pacific Dialogue. Where is Jack Ma? By Liang Xiao. Where is Jack Ma? It was a question that resonated around the world when Elon Musk first raised it at a conference in September 2021, and it once again became a trending topic when many political and economic experts noted how well-known Chinese private entrepreneurs, including the co-founder of Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba and former richest man in China, Ma Yun, also known as Jack Ma, were absent from the World Economic Forum annual meeting and its peripheral activities in the Swiss ski resort town of Davos, from January 16th to 20. Several Western media outlets interpreted this phenomenon as an increasingly serious suppression of private capital in China, suggesting that China is turning back the wheel of history and returning to its planned economy era, 1949 to 78. In fact, Ma has been living quite the globe-trotting retirement life. Over the Chinese New Year holiday, from January 21st to 27, he reportedly hosted a series of meetings with friends and finance executives in Hong Kong's Special Administrative Region, which some believe foreshowed his return to the business world. In addition, 45 representatives of 25 Chinese companies did go to Davos this year, though many kept a low profile. But China did take note of the global search for Jack Ma. Over the past 3 years, against the backdrop of COVID-19, the Chinese economy and the confidence of Chinese entrepreneurs have taken a hard hit. What's more, the Chinese government strengthened its regulation of malpractices in the real estate, internet, online gaming, extracurricular tutoring, and other industries where private capital concentrates. But misinterpretations of these measures led some entrepreneurs to doubt whether the government was just paying lip service when it publicly claimed to support private enterprises. And the fact that some local governments' excessive COVID-19 prevention and control measures heavily interfered with normal business production and operation processes was also reason for complaint among private entrepreneurs. But the aforementioned by no means indicates that the Chinese government wants to exclude private enterprises from its economic paradigm. Since 1978, when China first implemented its reform and opening up policy, the main feature of the country's economic restructuring has been to continuously open up areas previously dominated by the public economy to the private businesses and foreign capital, while constantly improving economic legislation and establishing rules and regulations from scratch. Chinese President Xi Jinping stated in clear terms that China will firmly support the private sector and let the market play a decisive role in resource allocation in his report delivered at the opening of the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China in Beijing on October 16th last year. According to data released by the State Administration for Market Supervision on October 11, 2022, the number of private enterprises in China grew from 10.8 million in late 2012 to 47 million last August, quadrupling in just one decade. Currently, private enterprises have created more than 80% of China's jobs and are crucial to the healthy development of China's economy. However, the country's public opinion has evolved over time. Successful business people with huge fortunes are no longer idolized. The wider public hopes to see these moguls assume more social responsibility. Some hugely influential companies have been criticized or even sued for monopolistic conduct as they leave little room for small and medium-sized companies to survive, let alone thrive. For China, the most pressing matter remains the continuous improvement of the related legal system to ensure both government and enterprises act within the boundaries of the law. As Vice Premier Liu, he made very clear at this year's World Economic Forum session, it is impossible for China to return to a planned economy. Copy edited by Elsbeth Van Paradon. Comments to Liang Xiao at sigamericas.com. Fact check. Opinion stronger local support for foreign-funded R&D centers by Lan Jinzhen. On January 18th, the State Council proposed 16 new policies aimed at encouraging the development of foreign-funded research and development (R&D) centers, increasing foreign involvement in innovation-driven economic growth, and sharing opportunities brought by China's high-quality development. The policies focus on the sciences and technologies themselves, the convenience of undertaking R&D, encouraging brain gain and intellectual property rights protection. In the past 4 decades, thanks to favorable policies, many companies have moved their regional or even global R&D centers to China, and now make up an important part of China's sci-tech innovation system. Despite this strong momentum of foreign R&D, the government is doubling down on its efforts to support foreign-funded R&D centers as part of its further opening up strategy. As is pointed out in the report of the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China held last October, China needs to further expand international sci-tech cooperation and exchange while trying to strengthen the global competitiveness of its innovation system. The government has also proposed the development of a new economic pattern in China known as the double development dynamic, domestic and international economic activities promoting each other, with domestic economic activity as the main force. While these new policies were in the making, the Ministry of Commerce solicited suggestions and advice from foreign investors, including some common requirements, such as to make it easier for expatriates to work in China, more financial support, more opportunities to participate in government missions, and stronger protection for intellectual property rights. Most of these ideas have been taken into consideration by the ministry in its formulation of the new policies. The new policies aim to promote the development of foreign-funded R&D centers in 3 main ways. First, they will create a better environment for these centers to move forward. They are allowed to apply for work and residence permits in China in the name of organizations. There are also favorable measures to accelerate trans-border receipts and payments for foreign personnel, while Chinese financial institutions are encouraged to give financial support to these centers. Additionally, administrative adjudication will play a bigger role in cases of patent infringement, and intellectual property rights protection will be strengthened. Second, foreign-funded R&D centers will work more to allocate global innovation-based resources. These centers have frequent international talent exchanges and sci-tech cooperation. The new policies aim to encourage sci-tech experts from these centers join in China's national and regional tech expert pools, so that they can contribute their wisdom through consultation, appraisal, and management of science programs. Third, these policies will help foreign-funded R&D centers to become better integrated with China's sci-tech innovation system, which may in turn bolster their R&D capabilities. According to the policy document, these centers are allowed access to China's major science instruments and infrastructure, as well as sci-tech reports and data. Chinese universities and science research institutions will also be encouraged to cooperate with these centers. As an active, innovative economy, China is an attractive destination for foreign-funded R&D centers. Recent years have seen an array of such centers flourish in China, particularly in the international sci-tech innovation centers of Beijing, Shanghai, and the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area. It's extremely important in the post-pandemic era to produce updated and more targeted policies and measures to support the further development of foreign-funded R&D centers in China. The newly issued policies are expected to not only greatly improve sci-tech innovation within China-based foreign-funded businesses, but also push China further into the global industrial sci-tech innovation system. Copy edited by G.P. Wilson. Comments to Lang Xinzhen at sigamericas.com. Features: Cooperation Effective Prescription. China-U.S. collaboration could deliver a shot in the arm for the global economy. By Zhao Wei. How can cooperation be strengthened in a fragmented world? The answer from China is to dig deep into the causes of fragmentation, promote positive-sum games, identify the possible converging areas of cooperation, and explore the mechanisms for doing so. Countries need to uphold the right principles and maintain the effective international economic order, strengthen international macro-policy coordination, and strike a good balance between inflation and growth, and join in a global response to climate change. Chinese Vice Premier Liu, he said at the World Economic Forum, WEF, annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland on January 17th. Famous for its winter sports and WEF activities, The mountain resort Davos, which had been quiet for 2 winters, came alive again when the 2023 session took place offline from January 16th to 20. It was the first time since the outbreak of COVID-19 that the forum was held in the traditional mode. Mutual understanding is an important prerequisite for cooperation, Liu said. Online communication, no matter how frequent or how technologically advanced, is no substitute for in-person meetings. China's message of hope. Compared to 3 years ago, the world today has changed dramatically. Globally, COVID-19 has never fully been brought under control, supply chains are disrupted, and the Russia-Ukraine conflict has accelerated the evolution of the geopolitical landscape. In the face of multiple crises, more than 2,500 delegates from 130 countries attended the forum, including at least 52 heads of state and government. The theme of the forum, Cooperation in a Fragmented World, laid out the direction for future cooperation as well as identifying potential challenges. Participants attempted to find solutions to the most pressing problems, especially to get economic growth back on track, and China's economy is once again being looked at with high hopes. In his speech, Liu summarized China's economic performance in 2022. The Chinese economy grew 3% year-on-year to a record high of 121 trillion yuan, $18 trillion, in 2022. The urban surveyed unemployment rate stood at 5.6%. The Consumer Price Index, which is often used as an indicator of the level of inflation, rose 2%, and current account surplus was slightly above 2% of GDP. We are confident that growth will most likely return to its normal trend, and the Chinese economy will see a significant improvement in 2023. A noticeable increase in imports, more investment by companies, and consumption returning to normal can be expected, Liu said. Liu reiterated China's commitment to taking economic development as the primary and central task, reinforcing a market economy, promoting all-round opening up, upholding the rule of law, and pursuing innovation-driven development. Some people say China will opt for a planned economy. That's by no means possible, Liu added. The reopening of China has to be the major event, and it will be a key driver for growth, Laura M. Cha, chairperson of Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing Limited, said while in Davos. Cha's optimism about China's economic growth was echoed by others. We expect China will see very strong growth, especially as you get later in the year, Douglas L. Peterson, president and CEO of S&P Global, said on the same panel discussion with Cha. At the macro level, Liu has sent a strong signal to the world that China's economy will be more open, more market-oriented, and more supportive of the development of the private sector. This could allay the doubts of foreign companies and foreign capital, increase their investment in China, and strengthen their cooperation with Chinese enterprises of all kinds. Chen Bing, a commentator on Shenzhen TV, a broadcaster based in Shenzhen, Guangdong Province in South China, said, "A much-anticipated meeting." In addition to making his high-profile speech, Liu met with U.S. Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen in Zurich on January 18th. The meeting lasted about 3 hours, exceeding the scheduled time. According to the meeting's press release, China and the U.S. are pragmatic and attach great importance to economic cooperation. Both sides sought to allay fears of a further deterioration in relations between the world's 2 largest economies. We exchanged views on macroeconomic developments and global financial issues in our efforts to deepen communication between the U.S. and China, Yellen tweeted after the meeting. The meeting, the first in-person talks between top economic officials of the 2 countries since U.S. President Joe Biden took office in 2021, covered a wide range of issues. It not only set the tone for the next steps in China-U.S. economic relations, but also discussed the implementation of specific aspects of cooperation between the 2 sides. Liu told Yellen that China and the U.S. need to seriously communicate and coordinate on climate and economic issues, and that he is ready for in-depth and pragmatic exchanges. In an exclusive interview with Hong Kong-based broadcaster Phoenix TV after the meeting, Liu said the 2 sides had a comprehensive discussion on the development of China-U.S. relationship, on the current status quo, and on how the 2 sides could strengthen cooperation, with the basic goal of implementing the important consensus reached by the 2 heads of state in Bali, Indonesia, in November 2022. During that meeting, Chinese President Xi Jinping and President Biden expressed the hope to put bilateral relationship back on a steady and upward trajectory. They agreed to strengthen communication and exchanges and advance practical cooperation. According to a recent Bloomberg report, trade between the U.S. and China is on track to break records. Imports and exports would add up to an all-time high in 2022, according to U.S. government data through last November. And data released by the General Administration of Customs of China on January 13th showed trade between the two countries reached a record high of about $760 billion last year. There are signs of rapprochement in the Lu-Yellen meeting, and some consensus may be reached through putting ourselves in each other's shoes, Chen said in his comments. Features: COVID-19. The next step. China keeps a watchful eye on COVID-19 after dealing with a massive wave of infection by Lu-Yan, despite Chinese health officials announcing on January 30th that the current wave of COVID-19 infections, the first wave to hit the country after it adjusted its COVID-19 control policies late last year, is coming to an end. The country remains alert. China will continue its surveillance of outpatient and emergency department visits, severe cases and deaths, as well as inbound travelers for new variants, give early warnings and take precautions. Chen Cao, a researcher with the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, China CDC, said at a January 30th press conference. Despite initial concerns that the Spring Festival travel rush, the country's typical 40-day transportation peak around the Chinese New Year, which fell on January 22nd this year, might accelerate the virus's spread, official figures showed no spikes during the holiday from January 21st to 27. However, this does not mean the virus is disappearing. Rather, this can be partly attributed to the herd immunity developed after China eased quarantine requirements in December 2022, experts said. Like elsewhere in the world, China needs to brace itself for future resurgences, they cautioned, leaving the past behind. The most recent wave of the COVID-19 pandemic in China has ended, China CDC announced in its report, named COVID-19 clinical and surveillance data. The report, released on January 25th, added that no new SARS-CoV-2 mutations have been identified. The report said the country's latest wave of infection peaked in late December last year and then went on a continuous decline. It based this conclusion on nationwide surveillance data on the disease from December 9, 2022 to January 23, 2023. The number of severe cases, meaning patients who have trouble breathing or experience persistent pain or pressure in the chest, and deaths in hospitals, reached a peak in late December 2022 or early January, and continued to go downward, according to the report. It also noted that related visits to outpatient fever clinics, usually units affiliated with hospitals' emergency department, showed the same trend. No significant flare-ups occurred during the Spring Festival holiday, China's most important festival that generates the country's, or even the world's, largest annual human migration. This year, 226 million trips were made during the 7-day holiday, a year-on-year increase of 71.2%, according to the Ministry of Transport. National Immigration Administration data showed 2.87 million cross-border trips were made during the holiday, including 1.43 million inbound trips and 1.44 million outbound trips, a 120.5% year-on-year increase. One of the main reasons for the decline in infections was that the vaccination coverage rate in China has reached a high level. Liu Yu, a researcher with the School of Public Health at Peking University, told People's Daily. China CDC data showed that more than 3.4 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses had been administered on the mainland by January 20th, and China's full vaccination rate reached 90.5%, an increase of 0.8% from July 2022. The vaccine coverage rate for people aged over 60 has hit 96%, up 11.3 percentage points from about 6 months ago. To better grasp the pandemic situation, a monitoring and reporting mechanism for the diagnosis and treatment of COVID-19 cases at primary-level medical institutions across the country was set up, National Health Commission official Fu Wei said at the January 30th press conference. Living in the now following the recent increase of weekly reported deaths worldwide, the World Health Organization, WHO, said in a statement on January 30th that COVID-19 continues to constitute a public health emergency of international concern. Although infection or vaccination may lead to higher levels of population immunity globally and limit the impact of morbidity and mortality, There is little doubt this virus will remain a permanently established pathogen in humans and animals for the foreseeable future, the WHO's International Health Regulations, 2005 Emergency Committee said. Despite the waning pandemic, the Chinese authorities and medical institutions haven't relaxed their efforts to safeguard people's health. The focus of the new COVID-19 response is on protecting people's health and preventing severe cases. Tang Yida, assistant to the dean and chief cardiologist with the Department of Cardiology at Peking University Third Hospital, told Beijing Review. In the 3 to 6 months to come, the level of immune protection obtained after infection will decline, and the risk of infection will increase, according to Li Tongzheng, head of the Department of Respiratory and Infectious Diseases at Beijing Yuan Hospital, affiliated with Capital Medical University. Li warns of the probability of new infection peaks when the virus mutates into more contagious variants, but he added the next possible peak will not be as serious as the one late last year. Currently, COVID-19 mostly affects those who have not yet been infected, constituting 15 to 20% of China's total population. Lu Mengji, a virologist with the Institute for Virology at the University of Duisburg-Essen in Germany, told China News Service on January 29th. Seniors with underlying diseases should also be extra careful, Lu said, adding that, if they haven't been infected already, getting vaccinated as soon as possible will better protect them. Currently, medical services at township and village clinics and community health centers, the primary level providers of health care in both rural and urban areas, have continuously improved nationwide. More than 94% of basic-level medical and healthcare institutions now have a sufficient stock of fever and cough-suppressing medication, plus traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, as TCM has been showing its unique advantages in the treatment of COVID-19 infection. As of January 27th, these same institutions had 2.89 million fingertip pulse oximeters and 219,000 oxygen generators, both crucial equipment for monitoring any changes in a patient's condition. To prepare for future waves of COVID-19 infection, Beijing plans to carry out a survey to measure COVID-19 antibody levels across its residential population to help assess the capital's pandemic situation and fine-tune its virus control strategy. The study will hopefully generate more insights into the actual number of asymptomatic cases and the antibody levels of people inoculated with different vaccines. To respond to public concern and educate people on COVID-19 and its variants, health authorities and experts have been updating all related information on traditional and social media platforms. For example, China CDC informed the public on January 31st about a new Omicron variant CH, 1.1 detected in over 65 countries. Explaining the pathogenicity and the domestic detection details, the agency said the new variant won't cause another infection wave nationwide in the short term. For the whole world, monitoring virus variation is one of the most important tasks, and China is no exception. The work is still ongoing. At the same time, the public should continue to stay focused on protecting their health, Liu concluded. Copy edited by Elsbeth Van Paradon. Comments to Luyan at sigamericas.com. Features population in the red. The consequences of China's negative population growth and their solutions. By Ji Jing. China's overall population fell by 850,000 year-on-year to 1.4118 billion in 2022, the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, announced on January 17th. This was the first time China registered negative population growth in 61 years. About 9.56 million babies were born last year, 1.06 million fewer than the 2021 number. The birth rate stood at 6.77 births per 1,000 people in 2022, down from 7.52 in 2021. Both figures were the lowest since the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949. By comparison, in 2021, the United States recorded 11.06 births per 1,000 people. The birth rate for the same year in India, poised to overtake China as the world's most populous country, stood at 16.42. Deaths surpassed births last year in China. The country logged its highest death rate since 1976, 7.37 deaths per 1,000 people, up from 7.18 in the previous year, according to the NBS. The cause is Zhang Quanbao, a professor with the Institute for Population and Development Studies at Xi'an Jiaotong University, one of the earliest population research institutes in China, said population changes are affected by the number of births, deaths, and migration. Without considering international migration, the negative population growth has been primarily caused by the declining birth rate and the increasing death rate. Zhang Lilong, an associate professor at the School of Labor Economics of Capital University of Economics and Business, told news portal thepaper.cn that the decline of the number of newborns is caused by multiple factors, including the later age at which people get married for the first time, the declining number of women of reproductive age, 15-49, and an overall decreasing willingness to have children. The increase in the number of deaths is related to the rapid aging of the population. Chen Wei, a professor at the Population Development Studies Center under Renmin University of China, said at a seminar hosted by the China Population Association on January 13 that according to the population censuses, the number of the country's women of reproductive age had dropped from some 370 million in 2010 to 320 million in 2020. Moreover, last year, China's total fertility rate, or the average number of children born to each woman throughout her reproductive years, fell below the replacement level, or the level of fertility at which a population exactly replaces itself from one generation to the next. A replacement fertility rate of 2.1, as documented in China in 1992, is necessary to generate broad population stability. China's 2022 fertility rate stood at just 1.08, and the momentum for negative population growth had been building up in the country for 3 decades. The COVID-19 pandemic is another reason for the low fertility rate. Chen explained the pandemic has increased the uncertainties of people's employment and income and impacted their health over the past 3 years, causing many to postpone or altogether cancel their plans to marry or have children. Economic consequences. Population and economic growth are interrelated. Population growth boosts economic growth by enlarging the labor force and providing a large domestic market for producers. Moreover, population growth encourages competition, which induces technological advancement and innovation. So the pressing question is, will a country be able to achieve sustained economic growth during a period of negative population growth? Zhang Shuying, a researcher with the China Population and Development Research Center, CPDRC, told ChinaNews.com that China still has population advantages as the size of the newly added labor force will continue increasing every year until 2035. At the same time, the proportion of people who have received higher education has increased, and the labor force is still relatively young. These advantages will combine with other production factors to form new growth points. Liu Hulian, an associate researcher with the CPDRC, said at the China Population Association seminar that based on international experiences, negative population growth can coexist with economic growth. He said as a basic element of social and economic development, people serve as both consumers and producers, and thus population affects economic growth through both the demand and supply sides. He explained that on the demand side, negative population growth means there are fewer consumers, resulting in a declining demand for items to meet basic needs such as food and housing. However, as the consumption ability improves and the consumption structure changes, the overall consumption demand may not necessarily decrease. On the supply side, although labor supply shrinks during negative population growth, the demand for labor also eases as production efficiency improves through the upgrading of the labor force quality and technological innovation. He concluded that whereas in the short term, negative population growth will have a mild influence on the economy, in the long term, it will positively impact the economic system's ability to withstand risks, and therefore technological progress and production efficiency improvement are needed to offset the initial impact. What to do? Zhang Lilong suggested launching more policies to reduce the costs of childbirth and raising children, which may increase the birth rate and dampen the negative population growth. China has adjusted its family planning policy several times in recent years, allowing all couples to have 2 children since 2016 and to have 3 children since May 2021, and rolling out a series of supportive measures to encourage childbirth. Facing an era of low fertility, Jinan, capital of Shandong province, for instance, announced earlier this year that couples will receive a child care subsidy of 600 yuan, $89 per month for a second or third child born after January 1, 2023, until the child turns 3. To cope with the impact of negative population growth on the labor force, Shi Yi, an associate researcher with the CPDRC, suggested stepping up education reform to ensure the curriculum of vocational schools and universities befits the growing demand for industrial transformation and upgrading. One big problem at present is that graduates educated in the current system can't meet the labor market's demand, which results in a waste of human resources, he said. Zhong Huiyang, an associate professor at the School of Banking and Finance under the Shanghai University of International Business and Economics, told the paper Datian that whether the existent labor force can be fully utilized is important. Better human resource allocation across the country can cushion the impact of the declining birth rate, he said. Technological advancement has increased production automation. As production efficiency improves, the demand for labor will drop, which will help ease the impact of a lower birth rate, Zhang added. In addition to the change in the scale of the population, structural changes, too, should receive more attention. According to the NBS, the number of working-age people aged 59 was 875.56 million as of late 2022, accounting for 62% of the population and 0.5 percentage points lower, or 6.66 million fewer, than the number in 2021. In the meantime, the number of people aged 60 and above reached 280.04 million, accounting for 19.8% of the overall population and increasing by 12.68 million from the previous year. Official estimates hold that China will become a severely aging society by 2035, with the number of people aged 60 and above reaching more than 30% of the overall population. Zhang Lilong said managing the impact of the reduced working-age population on the labor market and transforming labor-intensive industries into capital and technology-intensive ones are now top priorities. The rapid increase in the already staggering number of senior citizens poses new challenges to China's social and economic development and requires the development of senior care industries, as well as the fostering of an elderly-friendly society to cope with the problem. Copy edited by Elsbeth Van Paradon. Comments to Beijing at sigamericas.com. Features: digitalization. The Internet of Healthcare online medical services grow in popularity amid COVID-19, by Zhang Shasha. The number of online medical consultations has increased rapidly in China in recent days, as their usefulness during the new phase of COVID-19 management becomes increasingly apparent. According to a survey released by the National School of Development at Peking University in January, since the country revised its COVID-19 response in December 2022, approximately 55% of those with COVID-19 symptoms have made use of online medical services, while 17% chose to visit outpatient or emergency departments at hospitals. Services including online consultation, online prescription, and medication delivery provide patients with an option to be treated at home, which has eased the pressure on hospitals, reduced crowds, and lowered the risk of cross-infection, Zhao Yahui, head of the Bureau of Medical Administration under the National Health Commission, said at a press conference in December 2022. As China's focus of COVID-19 response has shifted from infection prevention to medical treatment, authorities have been rolling out new policies and measures to facilitate greater access to medical treatment and medicines. These measures include promoting the development of new and existing online hospitals and medical institutions that offer online diagnosis and treatment services. On December 12th, the Joint Prevention and Control Mechanism of the State Council, the body leading China's COVID-19 management efforts, issued an announcement allowing hospitals to provide online prescriptions to new patients in addition to existing ones. Prior to the adjustment, hospitals could only provide the service to patients who had previously received prescriptions while visiting doctors in person. Hunan Children's Hospital in Changsha, Hunan Province, opened an online platform on December 13th last year to provide COVID-19 related diagnosis, treatment, and consultation services. Most of the inquiries are text-based, but video consultations are also offered if patients find it hard to describe their symptoms by text. One local resident, surnamed Ma, used the system to talk to a doctor about her son, who had tested positive for COVID-19. The online inquiry procedure was easy to handle, and we didn't have to wait like when visiting overcrowded hospitals, Ma said. We filled in our address after the doctor gave the prescription and medication arrived quickly. It was so convenient. Game changers. Currently, online medical service providers in China fall into three categories: public hospitals, platforms such as Ali Health and JD Health, and local governments, according to an article published in China Health Insurance by Liu Liyun, an associate professor at Zhejiang Chinese Medical University. Providers are working to overcome the challenges that currently face the industry, such as raising public awareness of and trust in their services, promoting interprovincial medical insurance reimbursement, and integrating resources inside and outside hospitals. These challenges will persist even as COVID-19 fades from prominence. Weimai is a company focusing on using online infrastructure to provide patients medical services throughout their whole treatment process. Patients going to the hospital, requesting an appointment, seeing a doctor, and obtaining a prescription is the traditional way medical services operate, Qiu Jialin, CEO of Weimai, told Beijing Review. But that does not represent the whole treatment process, which also includes disease prevention, treatment, rehabilitation, and nursing. He gave the example that a patient who had recovered from COVID-19 may need to undergo a chest X-ray, have a medical checkup, undertake multiple online consultations, buy medication, and make an appointment for a return visit. Many people, especially those with mobility issues, require assistance in completing these procedures from a professional healthcare manager. Weimai helps patients with all these steps. He said handling treatment-related administration for clients requires cooperation between hospitals and online service providers. Another online medical service provider, WeDoctor, chose to cooperate with community clinics, which provide medical services to neighboring residents. Since 2020, the company, coordinating with 266 such institutions in Tianjin, began to build a cloud platform on which the participants can jointly procure pharmaceuticals to lower costs, and on which prescriptions made by one of them can be accessed online by the others, so patients can seek follow-up treatment at any member of the network at their convenience. Such moves answer the call made by the Joint Prevention and Control Mechanism of the State Council, encouraging community clinics, large hospitals, and online medical service platforms to cooperate with each other in bolstering China's healthcare development. Post-pandemic prospects. On December 15, 2022, the National Development and Reform Commission released a guideline on expanding domestic demand. It underlined the construction of online medical infrastructure and reforms to increase public access to online medical services. With policy support and growing demand, online healthcare is gaining ground. According to iResearch, a data analysis platform, China's online healthcare service market is estimated to reach 87.6 billion yuan, $12.97 billion, in 2023, up 25.1% year-on-year. Cheng Yi, Senior Vice President of WeDoctor, said at a healthcare forum on January 12 that the number of online medical service users will continue to expand and digital solutions for medical care will become more diversified. The medical service system should shift from being disease cure-centered to health management-centered, Chung said. New medical services must put patients first, Cho said. Where there are needs, there should be services. Chu said previously people got taxis on the streets, representing the first phase of development in which people seek and wait for services. In the second phase, after the emergence of ride-hailing apps, cars began waiting at office buildings for their passengers to come out, representing services waiting for people. Nowadays, if you take taxis to the airport for 3 consecutive days, then on the 4th day, the app will recommend to you cars that are heading for the airport before you even enter your destination, representing the third phase, services seeking people. China's healthcare industry is still in the phase in which people wait for services, Chiu said. There is still a lot of room for us to explore new business models, which is where our opportunities lie. Copy edited by G.P. Wilson. Comments to Zhangish at sigamericas.com. Feature S. Through Their Eyes, Love Knows No Bounds. A young American celebrates Spring Festival with his Sichuan family by Tao Xing, very tall, a righteous man, not your average American, highly adaptable, and a communist. Zhou Xin's family has many colorful ways to describe her boyfriend, Dylan Austin Walker, who hails from the U.S. state of Massachusetts. To celebrate Chinese New Year, also known as Spring Festival, on January 22nd this year, Walker traveled to Zhou's hometown of Beijing in Sichuan province to mark the occasion together with his extended Chinese family. This was his third visit to his girlfriend's Laojia, which literally translates as old home and refers to one's native place. Spring Festival is kind of like Christmas in the U.S. when family members reunite and share food together, but for me, this Chinese holiday has a stronger atmosphere, Walker told Beijing Review in practically flawless standard Chinese. Walker has been studying the Chinese language since he was a child. In 2016, he attended Beijing Language and Culture University, BLCU, for his undergraduate and postgraduate studies, and he currently works in Zhengzhou, capital of Henan Province in central China, which is roughly 950 kilometers from the southwestern city of Beijing. Walker had previously partaken in Spring Festival celebrations at Chinese schools and overseas Chinese associations in the U.S., but experiencing the long-standing tradition in Beijing was very different. In the U.S., it's mainly about having dinner together and watching performances. It's hard to really experience the traditional customs, he explained. In addition, he feels that when it comes to celebrating festivals, China's bigger and smaller cities all have their own traditions, with the latter perhaps boasting a slightly more festive atmosphere. Savoring the experience, the first 2 times I arrived in Beijing relatively late, right before Spring Festival, so I didn't get more involved in the preparations in the lead-up to the holiday, Walker said. This year he got to experience a few local Chinese Spring Festival customs, for example, preparing smoked meat, a local holiday staple, in Zhou's aunt's village. Zhou's family lives in downtown Beijing, and as smoking is the process of flavoring and cooking food by exposing it to smoke from burning or smoldering material, most often wood, the area has several regulations in place for doing so, for example, requiring people to smoke their meat at designated areas. Zhou's aunt lives about a 1-hour drive from the city center, where families have their own smokehouses or fire pits to cure their meat. We mainly joined in by cutting down the branches from the pine and cypress trees and adding them to the fire to smoke the meat, Walker said. The smoking process allows the pine and cypress scents to penetrate the meat, injecting it with local flavor. Plus, it also preserves the meat, according to Zhou. It's one of my favorite Sichuan specialties, and I have it every time I come to Beijing, Walker added. Zhou's relatives also hosted a barbecue in Walker's honor, with the family sitting around the warm stove, eating and chatting away. After a while, the children started pulling Walker and Zhou away from their hearty meal to set off some fireworks together. The kids all gathered around Walker and bombarded him with their curiosity. "Why are you so tall?" He is 185 centimeters. "Did you get a PhD?" Walker patiently replied to all their questions. "We all wish them a happy life," Zhou's cousin said about the transnational couple. Happy together, Walker and Zhou first met in 2015 when Walker was a high school graduate making his way across China during a month-long trip. Zhou was a sophomore in college at that time and kindly helped Walker buy a ticket to enter Beijing's Summer Palace, an imperial garden from the Qing dynasty, 1644 to 1911. They kept in touch and sparks soon flew. "Because of her, I became even more determined to come to China to pursue my studies," Walker said. That is how he ended up at BLCU. "We've been together for more than 7 years, but we're in 2 different countries or different cities in China for a long time because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It was mainly his persistence that kept the relationship going," Zhou said. "I think that given we were able to overcome these obstacles over the past few years, no matter what issues the future may hold, we'll be fine," Walker added. Today, Zhou's family is very supportive of the couple, but at the very beginning, when Zhou's mother first heard her daughter was dating an American, she strongly disapproved of the relationship. Nevertheless, Walker managed to win her over. "After spending a considerable amount of time with him, we concluded Walker was a young man with a strong sense of righteousness," she said. "As long as Zhou is happy and they are happy together, we support them," Zhou's family members all reiterated. Zhou has traveled to the U.S. on 2 occasions and has met Walker's family there. Now they all stay in touch via a group chat on social media. Last year, Walker proposed to Zhou and they plan to get their marriage certificate this year. Although marriages between Chinese and foreign citizens in China require a stack of paperwork, Walker has already acquainted himself with all the related procedures. "I feel Walker is gradually becoming part of the family," Zhou said. She further added he is rather special compared with other expats, mainly because of his extensive interest in China's development and culture. At first, Walker couldn't understand the local Sichuan dialect, but now he can cope with the accent. "He even got used to the spicy food," Zhou laughed. "I hope that in the future I can also come to Beijing at other times to see more different things," Walker said. The development of China-U.S. relations is another one of this couple's focuses. As the 2 countries' relationship hasn't exactly been very smooth in recent years, Walker hopes that ordinary people in both countries can do their part to improve the bilateral engagement through people-to-people exchanges. He himself has been introducing the real China to his family members and friends in the U.S., and also presents the daily life of Americans to his circle of connections in China. Only this way can we promote exchanges, mutual understanding, respect, and trust between the people of both countries, Walker concluded, reporting from Beijing, Sichuan Province. Copy edited by Elsbeth Van Paradin. Comments to Teoxing at sigamericas.com. Culture, Breguet Lights, Big Laughs. China's youth are warming up to the jokes and jibes of live stand-up comedy, by Kui Xiaoqin. On the third floor of Bitaomei Life Plaza, a shopping mall in Beijing, is a comedy club named Kangaroo Comedy. It is a place where people can catch a live stand-up comedy show, still a novelty to many Chinese, and indulge in hours of laughter. Influenced by the popularity of online variety shows, stand-up comedy has gone viral in China over the past few years. More and more audience members are coming to watch offline shows and enjoy the live comedy, Zhou Shenglong, founder of Kangaroo Comedy, said. According to Zhou, the growing audience number indicates the huge potential of China's stand-up comedy market. Local stand-up. Some of the online comedy and talk shows that have been trending in China in recent years include Chipa Shuo, You Can You Bibi, an online talk show, and Tukao Dahui, Rock and Roast, a comedy roast, an event in which one particular guest is joked about and made fun of by his or her peers, usually in front of an audience. At the end of 2022, Tukao Dahui's 5th season topped the variety show viewer rankings. The two shows are widely seen as the launchpad for stand-up comedy to gain nationwide attention in China. Tukao Dahui especially has greatly increased the recognition of stand-up comedy in China, Zhou said. And today, the capital of China alone already features 10 promising related businesses like Kangaroo Comedy. As a Western type of performance, stand-up comedy is believed to have flourished in the U.S. in the late 19th century. When it first made its way into China a little over a decade ago, it was inaccurately known as tuokuxiu, a transliteration from the English word talk show. According to Zhou, he connected with the genre by watching Jim Carrey's comedies and was greatly influenced by George Carlin, 1937 to 2008, a famous American comedian considered as one of the most influential stand-up comedians. Some believe that stand-up comedy is the same thing as xiangsheng, also known as crosstalk or comic dialogue, which is a traditional performing art in China. That's a misconception, comedy scriptwriter and stand-up comedian Duo Zixuan said. Xiangsheng is a unique Chinese art form that contains a wide range of local cultural connotations. The two genres do have one shared feature, though. Both address the lives of ordinary people through humor and banter. Born and raised in Tianjin, one of the most prosperous cities rich in Chinese opera culture and comic art, Duo used to be an actor and comedy scriptwriter, but then decided to shift his focus to stand-up. Stand-up comedy has been greatly localized since it was introduced to China. Unlike Western acts, which often address political and sensitive topics, the Chinese stand-up act homes in more on daily life and current events. Take the example of Niao Niao, the runner-up in Tukao Dahui's 5th season. Being an introvert at heart, she jokes about her social phobia on stage. A popular comedian once said, "Everybody can do 5 minutes of stand-up comedy." And I agree with that. Beijing-based Liu Dao, a part-time stand-up comedian, said, "For him, making people laugh is the most basic essence of stand-up comedy. While being funny, you can also put some thoughts out there and make people think, which is a very powerful aspect," he added. Liu also believes that joking about daily ongoings strongly appeals to the Chinese audience. Passion and principles. Specializing in information technology, Liu is a full-time technician and sometimes needs to rush back to the office to work overtime after a performance. "I work in shifts so my hours are more flexible and I can perform at the comedy club almost every evening," he explained. Just like Zhou, Liu is a big fan of Carlin's. However, it is the rise of China's online variety shows and one offline stand-up comedy that triggered him to take his own first tentative steps into the business. Nonetheless, Liu has no intention of turning his nightly gigs into a full-time occupation because he, in his own words, really enjoys being able to go to work while also engaging in what I love to do on the sidelines. Zhou, however, has devoted all his time and energy to stand-up comedy over the years, and even now that he owns his own comedy club, he still takes to the stage whenever he can. "I need to keep improving my game to keep up with the industry," Zhou explained. Duo Zixuan is a close friend of Zhou's. According to the latter, Duo loves Chinese traditional culture and his jokes are down to earth but not vulgar. Duo has always tried to bring China's basic traditional cultural values, benevolence or ren, righteousness or yai, propriety or li, wisdom or zi, and fidelity or jin, to audiences in a funny way. Duo is a gifted comedian in the eyes of peers, but he has labeled himself as a comedian with attitude. In his opinion, whether it be stand-up comedy or other forms of comedy, the ultimate goal is to express a point of view. Laughter is often the only illustration of stand-up comedy, but as comedians we must have a critical spirit. If we only aim to please people, how can we have the ability to do a comedy roast? Duo asked. Duo once worked into his jokes the true story of his father selling the family home to lend money to a friend. The audience applauded his wit, and at the same time recognized this was the way many Chinese treat their friends. Cherishing friendship is one of the country's traditional cultural values. Just like this one, many of Duo's jokes are based on his own life, and he hopes that by telling these everyday stories, he can convey the traditional beliefs of the Chinese people. Although my jokes have a local cultural background, Beijing's expats can understand them, Duo said. They're about human nature. Currently, China's stand-up comedy has about 10,000 active performers, but Joe believes the industry is still in its nascent stage in the country, and the market is far from saturated. Copy edited by Elsbeth Van Paradon. Comments to Zhao Wei at sigamericas.com. Culture, the Sichuan Sizzle. The 29th International Dinosaur Lantern Festival, which lit up on January 17th, brightened the dark night in Zigong City, Sichuan Province in southwest China. As the city's calling card, the Lantern Spectacular attracted more than 300,000 visitors during the 7-day Spring Festival holiday from January 21st to 27. Ticket sales rose 77% year-on-year to 51.3 million yuan, $7.6 million. The smallest prefecture-level city in all of Sichuan, Zigong is home to some of the world's oldest dinosaur fossils, a 1,000-year-old well salt culture, lantern craftsmanship, and a myriad of local delicacies that cater to every foodie's tastes. The city welcomed a whopping 1.06 million tourists over the holiday period, which was also the first Spring Festival break following the easing of China's pandemic control policies, up 46.6% year-on-year. The recovery of Zigong's tourism industry was perhaps the epitome of the nationwide lift in tourism seen during the holiday. According to data released by the Sichuan Provincial Department of Culture and Tourism, the 53.88 million tourist visits to the province made it the top-ranking holiday destination in the country, with tourism revenue reaching 24.22 billion yuan, $3.6 billion. These two figures recovered to 89.73% and 84.75% of the 2019 Spring Festival holiday numbers, respectively. Text and photos by Wei Yao. Expats' Eye Language as a Bridge, Not a Barrier, by Vicky Huang. As a teacher of Standard Chinese, I never imagined I'd be able to connect with 140,000 students from all over the world. But here I am, helping and teaching people from the comfort of my own home. And let me tell you, it feels both amazing and surreal. My love for language and teaching started long before I became the creator of Learn Chinese with Vicky on Instagram and TikTok. I was a competitive literary translator who'd won 5 prestigious awards for my English-Chinese translations, including the Liang Shikyu Literary Award. This background gave me an intuitive understanding of the connection between language and culture. As an immigrant from China's Taiwan to Canada, I am no stranger to the common misconceptions that non-natives hold about Chinese as a language and culture. These misconceptions turn out to be the best hooks, and those I teach get more intrigued and remember what they learn as a result. That is the beauty of learning a language you have an ambiguous understanding about. Your assumptions about the world get challenged, and you get to wear the shoes of those you had trouble relating to. One example is the unluckiest Chinese zodiac sign, which most Westerners will guess is the snake. But it's not. There are no Slytherins in China. There was never an evil snake that tempted Eve and caused the downfall of humanity. In fact, Chinese people see snakes as intelligent, rational, and flexible. Through my writings for Time Out Shanghai and my studies in Chinese philosophy with exchange students from Europe and North America, I was able to gain an insider's perspective on the Chinese expat community. This expertise is what draws many students to me. While some may think I'm overqualified to be teaching beginners, I firmly believe these students need the highest quality instruction to build a strong foundation. And that's exactly why I set up my Chinese Beginner Masterclass, a 50-lesson, fully captioned video course with a human teacher, one-on-one support, and community experience. It suits total and advanced standard Chinese beginners who want to connect with new friends in a casual and formal setting, all in a culturally respectful way. My students come from all over society and range in age from young children to retired seniors. But what they all share is a passion for learning and a desire to make meaningful connections with the people and culture of China. I am proud to have created a thriving and supportive community of learners from all over the world, and I am always inspired by the amazing stories and experiences my students share with me. One of my most unforgettable students was Robin Andrus. She adopted her son from China 4 years ago and was looking for a teacher who could rekindle his desire to speak standard Chinese. Her son had been losing his ability to speak the language since he arrived in the United States, and Andrus felt sad about this. She appreciated his efforts to integrate into his new culture, but wanted him to own his identity. She wanted to learn alongside him so they could explore the culture of his birthplace together. I felt extremely honored to be by their side as they learned to understand and celebrate his heritage. Some English schools will advertise they teach received pronunciation or the Queen's English, but I do not subscribe to that philosophy. To me, the labeling of an accent as socially superior or inferior destroys the soul of language learning, which is to touch lives and forge connections. Language can act as either a bridge or a barrier. I choose to build the bridge. The author is a Canadian award-winning translator, copy-edited by Elsbeth Van Paradon. Comments to Dingjing at sigamericas.com. End of the February 9th, 2023 edition of the Beijing Review. Thank you for listening.